everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of Lala's Bedtime Tales. It's that time of the week where you want to unwind and listen to an and well, this week's sensual tale I'm sure will be relatable to a lot of listeners out there. So I have a question for all my sexy listeners out there that had older brothers and sisters. Did they not always have the hottest friends, or was it just me? Like, in your head, or wildest fantasies, they were your boyfriend or girlfriend. They just didn't know it yet. Well, this week's hot and steamy summer loving story, Kimberly Cho can relate to all of our forbidden childhood crushes. So, let's dive right into the lustful and horny world of Kimberly Cho. It was Kimberly's parents' annual end of the summer party at their summer beach house in Pensacola, Florida. Everyone knew the Chos knew how to party, so people came in droves every Labor Day weekend to drink away the end of the summer. It was past midnight, and the party calmed down. People settled into the air-conditioned home to escape the blazing Florida heat and sleep off all the booze. Kimberly was not yet ready to go to bed, so she drunkenly stumbled her way to the edge of the pool. She dipped her feet into the cold pool water, hoping it would help her sober up a little. Kimberly was drunk off her ass due to her older brother Aiden, sneaking her booze throughout the day behind their parents' back. After a ton of pestering and bargaining, she got Aiden to agree to be her accomplice at this year's party since she was 17 and entering her senior year of high school. Aiden caved and agreed she could have some adult fun before starting school in the fall. But as Kimberly sat on the edge of the pool, she could barely think straight. She stared up at the sky, kicked her feet in the pool water, and started giggling uncontrollably. She had no earthly idea what she found so hysterical. "What's so funny?" Kimberly heard a deep voice boom as she looked down and saw the Puerto Rican Adonis of her dreams bob his head to the surface of the pool a few feet away from her. Kimberly stared at her brother's best friend, Joel Sanchez. For this so hot scene, check out my Patreon at the link in the episode notes or scan the QR code on the screen. Trust me, you don't want to miss it, babe. And her sexual feelings for her big brother's best friend turned her whole body into jelly. Joel swam to the edge of the pool and leveraged himself to sit next to her. He was tan and well-built, with water dripping down over his washboard abs, making her nipples grow tighter and her face become flushed with sexual heat. He nudged her shoulder with a smirk on his beautiful face. Her eyes connected with his hazel eyes, and the contact of his bare shoulder against her sent waves of lust coursing through her body. I needed some fresh air," Kimberly squeaked out as she looked down at her feet and splashed more water around, wishing she could take in Joel's beauty with sober eyes. Joel laughed and started wrapping her ponytail around his finger like he'd always done since the day they met when he was 12 and she was an annoying little 8-year-old. His contact always made her feel as if he had some affection for his best friend's irritating kid little sister. Of all of Aiden's longtime friends, Joel was the nicest to her, making her see him as not only an attractive guy, but as a sweetheart. Her stomach flopped and her heart fluttered whenever he was around. "You know what I think?" Joel asked as he bumped her shoulder with his once again. "What do you think?" Kimberly asked quietly and felt Joel's fingers slip under her chin to force her to make eye contact with him. Kimberly was mesmerized, even in her drunken state, by his big hazel eyes that looked more of a forest green in the shadows of the moonlight. She admired his long, beautiful eyelashes that now glistened in the light of the moon from the water since he just emerged from the pool. I think you're drunk, Kimdo. Joelle laughed as he used the silly nickname that combined her name with Kiddo. Kimberly absolutely hated this nickname, which gave her brother and all his friends enjoyment to use it. But don't worry, your secret's safe with me, he added as he poked her side. Kimberly was about to roll her eyes at him for using that nickname, but before she could, he began tickling her, which gave her a real reason to giggle uncontrollably. As she tried to move away, it rolled her white tank top above her midriff, exposing her stomach and giving him more access to her belly, where she was most ticklish. She tried to wiggle out of his reach, but lost her balance and hit her head back on the concrete. Joelle abruptly stopped as Kimberly closed her eyes out of embarrassment more so than pain. Kimberly, open your eyes. Are you okay? Joelle said, with the words rushing in a jumble as he panicked, thinking he may have caused her to hurt herself. Pleasure flowed through her body as he touched her head and then her right cheek. Her eyes fluttered open to meet his gaze. Joelle was kneeling over her with two muscular arms on both sides of her face. He peered down into her eyes with lines creasing his beautiful forehead with concern. Kimberly didn't know if it was liquid courage or the years of her secret fantasies of him, but she reached her right hand up, cupping the dark curls at the back of his neck. She lifted herself so that their lips were just a few inches apart, gazing at the fullness of his perfect lips. She glanced up at his eyes that were darkening and quizzically staring into hers. Kimberly was unaware of who moved first, but she felt the softness of Joelle's lips on hers as wetness pulled between her thighs and warmth crept up from her toes to her face.
Well, looks like things are getting way too hot for YouTube to handle. If you're craving the full uncensored story, with all the smutty details, join me on Patreon to get access to the steamy goodness. Just click the link in the episode notes or scan the on-screen QR code for the full uncensored experience. See you there for a naughty good time.
Speed. Fix your shirt. I can see your tits. Joelle barked at her as he paced up and down beside her. Confused and mortified, Kimberly fixed her tank and felt ashamed for not wearing a bra underneath her choice of shirt for that day. She sat up and hugged her knees to her chest as she watched Joelle cover his face with his hands and then sit down cross-legged beside her. Joelle, Kimberly heard the words tumble out as Joelle held up a hand to silence her. She permanently etched that same hand into her mind. It had only recently teased. That was a mistake. We've both been drinking. I'm grossed out. You're a child, and I'm a grown man. I don't sleep with or prey on young girls, Joelle whispered as he put his head in his hands. Joelle, I'm old enough to know I want you, and I've always liked you, Kimberly said coyly. Joelle's eyed her with disgust, and then he let out an uncomfortable laugh, and he made his way back towards the house. Kimberly, you're a child. You're 17. Have you even had sex yet? I'm not going to be that one for you. You're drunk, and you're my best friend's kid sister with a silly crush. Take your ass inside and go to bed. And don't breathe a word of this to anyone, Joelle bellowed out as he rolled his eyes and slipped back into her parents' summer home. Kimberly sat there feeling rejected and disgusted, like a silly child. The silly child that Joelle felt he needed to chastise for bad behavior and unwanted attention towards him. At least he had disappeared and wouldn't witness her heartache as she felt hot tears roll down her face. 6 years later, Kimberly let out a deep breath of air that she didn't know she was holding as her Uber pulled up to her parents' summer home. After leaving for college, Kimberly had not been back to their summer house since the summer before her senior year of high school. But with her so far away in New York, her mom begged for her to celebrate the end of summer with family and friends at their annual Labor Day weekend party. Stepping out of the Uber and hoisting her weekender on her shoulder, she walked to the front door and braced herself as she knocked, and no one answered. Frustrated and annoyed, she knocked harder until her mother swung the door open with glazed eyes and a margarita in her hand, drunkenly sloshing it onto the floor. "Kimmy," her mother purred, looking as hot as ever, in her 50s, with her well-made-up face and blonde curls spilling over her shoulders. Kimberly should be ashamed of her mother wearing a bikini at her age, but she felt more envy than anything over her mother's curvaceous figure and big breasts. Although Kimberly had finally begun to fill out at 23, she didn't have the Kardashian curves her mother possessed. Kimberly gave her mother a peck on her cheek and rushed upstairs to her bedroom to dump her weekender. After an almost 2-hour plane ride from New York, Kimberly was exhausted and not in much of a mood to party. But she quickly found some attire for the event happening downstairs. She paired a black and white striped bikini top with cheeky denim shorts and made her way downstairs to the backyard, pulling the sunglasses from the top of her head to cover her eyes. She heard the blaring music and splashing in the pool and hoped her brother's friends weren't still coming to these parties, especially one in particular. As she made her way towards her dad's table, she felt someone pick her up and swing her around. "Kimdo, I see you've changed your look since Christmas. You look like a mix between Rosé from Blackpink and an Asian baby girl," Aiden obnoxiously stated as he sat her back down on the ground. She wasn't surprised he'd say that with her waist-length rose-colored hair, nose ring, and tattoo sleeve on her right arm. Hopefully, her changed appearance made her look less demure and more like the edgy, contemporary New Yorker artist that she embodied. But her brother's comments about her appearance still made her cringe on the inside. "Nice to see you too, Aiden," Kimberly said as she tried to inch away from her brother into the safety of her father's table in the shade where she knew no one would bother her. Her actions went unnoticed by her drunken brother as he began to drag her more into the crowded backyard. Her stomach dropped as the grill master turned around, and she was face to face with the one who stomped on her heart a few years ago. "Joelle, you asked about Kimdo the other day, and guess who decided to grace us with her presence looking like a K-pop star?" Aiden obnoxiously joked as he mussed up Kimberly's hair. Kimberly felt bile rise in her throat as she looked Joelle up and down slowly. It was like he became even sexier in the passing years, standing there in just a pair of blue swim trunks and a silly apron that would have looked ridiculous on anyone else, but added to his sex appeal. He was still well-built, and his lovely, chiseled jaw was now covered with a dark-haired, well-trimmed beard that made her milky in between her legs. She wondered what it would feel like to have him run that facial hair around her hardening nipples and on her pussy. Her eyes finally met his, and she could see he was taken aback by her new appearance. "Kimmy is all grown up, as it would seem. I'm glad you decided to grace us with your presence. I hope you're enjoying New York," Joelle exclaimed, moving towards Kimberly to hug her. Kimberly's stomach flipped as she felt anger rise in her. She was shocked by him acting as if he hadn't destroyed her years ago at this very place. "It has been good. I actually wanted to go say hi to Dad, if you boys will excuse me," Kimberly quickly said as she turned around and fled to her dad's table. She spent the rest of the afternoon and evening drinking margaritas and people watching. Honestly, while person watching, Kimberly thought to herself. She was irritated with how Joelle flounced around the backyard with women of all ages gushing over him and him playing around like it was just the time of his life. Kimberly couldn't help but feel jealous, watching Joelle flirt with other women, especially since she still felt agony over how he made her feel the last time she was at one of her parents' end of the summer party. Night had fallen and the guests moved inside to retire. Kimberly said goodnight to her father and decided that this was the perfect opportunity to take a swim. She waited a while, sitting on the edge of the pool to ensure she was out of sight from everyone. Then she removed her cheeky denim shorts and bikini to cool off from the familiar Florida heat and sexual tension from Joelle's presence. She dunked her whole body underwater and swam lazily through the pool, enjoying the peace and quiet the late night brought her. She closed her eyes, taking in the day and thinking about how being around Joelle still made her want to touch herself. Kimberly's eyes abruptly opened as she heard a loud thud and felt a splash of water. She began to panic, realizing she was no longer alone in the pool and she was butt-ass naked. She began to make her way towards the side of the pool, but she felt a hand yanking her back. "Hey, Kimberly," an all too familiar deep masculine voice said to her as she spun around to face him, covering her burly bare breasts with her hands. She looked into those beautiful hazel eyes and noticed a smirk on his face. "Why so shy all of a sudden?" Joelle joked, swatting at her hands covering her chest. "Why are you out here?" Kimberly furiously questioned as her body became aroused from his presence in the pool with her. She let her body drift further away from his so she could put some distance between them. "You've been on my mind lately, and I haven't seen you in years outside of social media. We haven't gotten a chance to catch up since you arrived, so why not now?" Joelle asked, floating on his back. "I'm naked," Kimberly blurted out, feeling more self-conscious than ever before, especially from being around a man who once rejected her sexually. "I have a secret, Kimdo. I noticed, and I'm naked too," Joelle whispered as he came closer to her. "You're all grown up now, Kimberly, and you came to this party looking every inch of a grown woman." Joelle chuckled, making Kimberly roll her eyes. "So," Kimberly started to say as Joelle moved closer to her, and their mouths were inches apart once again.
Oopsie. The spice is off the charts for this episode. This romance is getting too steamy for YouTube. Want the full spicy moment? Moans, mess, and all the dirty details? Head over to my Patreon and get the uncensored version of this tale. Simply tap the link in the notes or scan the QR code on the screen to discover how the real climaxes of this story unfold.
She sat up and stared at him, and he smiled at her with a sharp intake of air. "We should head inside," he said, making Kimberly feel awkward as he got up and pulled on his swim trunks, not too far from where her bikini lay. Joelle offered her his hand, and she took it to climb out of the pool, feeling ashamed of her nakedness. Once dressed, Joelle took her hand and kissed it, and then said, "You go first, and I'll come in later." Kimberly laid on her bed, mortified and betrayed by her body. She couldn't believe how easily she messed around with Joel, even after he had rudely and coldly rejected her years ago. She couldn't close her eyes and fall asleep without thoughts of what had happened between them in the pool. Just the idea of their hookup made her body aroused and her pussy become milky. She heard her door open, and she sat up to see Joel entering quickly with a finger over his lips. He switched off the light, and she felt him slide into the bed. She laid back down, confused and dumbfounded as to why Joel was currently lying in her bed and staring at her ceiling. "Why are you here?" Kimberly harshly whispered as she felt Joel's fingers travel up her oversized nightshirt.
Once upon a time, things got a whole lot of spicy. Are you craving something piping hot? For this so hot scene, check out my Patreon at the link in the episode notes or scan the QR code on the screen. Trust me, you don't want to miss it, babe.
Kimberly had awoken that morning alone in her bed. Joel had left her so tired that she didn't realize he had even left her room after f***ing her brains out. She walked into the kitchen in a short sundress that gave her the illusion of cleavage. When she walked in, her mom's best friend exclaimed, "Oh, Kimmy, you are so grown up now that you're done with college and out in the real world working in New York. I am just loving this new and edgy grown look of yours. I remember when you were the little girl chasing Aiden and his friends down, trying to get them to play with you." Kimberly felt the blushing heat rise to her face as Aiden laughed at her mom's best friend's comment, adding to her embarrassment. Joelle sat next to Aiden and their eyes met. Joelle gave her a lazy smile, making her blush deepen and causing her to avert her eyes. "I'd love to play with her now," Brandon, Aiden's annoying friend from college, joked, which made Kimberly's skin crawl. Aiden's eyes narrowed, and she watched as he reached over the table and hit Brandon in the shoulder. "Ouch, dude, it was a joke. We joke about girls all the time," Brandon said as he rubbed his chest, exasperated. "Kimberly is not a girl, not a woman, not anything any male acquaintance of mine should be thinking about or making sexual advances towards. It's gross. She's my baby sister," Aiden exclaimed in his obnoxious, protective big brother role. Kimberly rolled her eyes as she sat down next to Aiden and said, "I'm a big girl, brother. I can protect myself." As Kimberly poured herself a glass of orange juice, she heard Joelle say sternly, "Brandon, you owe Kimberly an apology." She immediately felt the embarrassment of being the center of attention at the breakfast table. Her brother downed the rest of his eggs and crossed his arms across his chest while giving Brandon a death stare. Brandon narrowed his eyes at both Joelle and Aiden and then turned to Kimberly and said, "I'm sorry for my joke and my admiration of that hot, tight little body of yours." Aiden and Joelle jumped up quickly and Kimberly sucked in her breath. "Boys, leave it alone or take it outside, but do not destroy my kitchen," Kimberly's mother yelled as she poured herself a glass of champagne at the kitchen table. "We're going to the beach," Aiden said, and Aiden and his 5 friends left the kitchen. Due to all the commotion, Kimberly didn't even notice Aiden's other 3 friends at the table until they dispersed. Kimberly sat in silence and enjoyed her yogurt and granola as her mother and her mother's friends started day drinking on mimosas. "We're going into the town to shop, and your father and his friends are out golfing. Do you want to join us, ladies?" Kimberly's mom asked her as she laid back on the couch and stared at the ceiling. "No, Mom. I may just stay here and draw or walk down to the beach," Kimberly responded as her mom dropped a kiss on her forehead and left the house with her girlfriend. Kimberly lay on the couch in the den alone, thinking about the amazing.
Well, looks like things are getting way too hot for YouTube to handle. If you're craving the full uncensored story, with all the smutty details, join me on Patreon to get access to the steamy goodness. Just click the link in the episode notes or scan the on-screen QR code for the full uncensored experience. See you there for a naughty good time.
"I hope I successfully drove all thoughts of Brandon from your mind," Joelle cockily said as he let go of her and began fixing her clothes and then his own. "Hello?" they heard Aiden call as he stepped into the doorway of the den. Kimberly stared at Joelle with panicking eyes as he yanked her down behind the couch. He mouthed to her to stand up and shoved her until she popped up from behind the couch. Her face was flushed, and she was sure she was sweating from the intense sex with Joelle. "Found it," Joelle screamed as he stood up and Aiden eyed them quizzically. She couldn't find her earring, so I was helping her find it. Joelle handed Kimberly a hoop on the floor that wasn't her earring, and she smiled and nodded at Aiden. Aiden shook his head out of confusion and walked into the kitchen, and Joelle followed. Kimberly dismissed herself to her room and collapsed in her bed. When she got to her room, she thought about how royally screwed they'd been if Aiden had walked in a few minutes earlier. It was the last night of Labor Day weekend. Kimberly sat at a distance from her parents' annual bonfire and fireworks show, signifying the end of summer and a great weekend with friends and family. She was mesmerized by the fireworks and always looked forward to the bonfire at the beach when she was younger. But at 23 years of age and feeling like Joelle's dirty kept secret, she felt like she needed to put distance between her and the rest of the party. She didn't know how she felt about being around her family again, or the empty void that Joelle left in her heart. It was random that he suddenly came on to her so hot and heavy, but then sent her mixed signals. After this weekend, she wondered where they'd stand now that she was of an acceptable age to him and he was almost 28. They were both more mature, out in the real world, living their lives. She wondered where this would go between her and Joelle, and, most of all, how Aiden would take the situation. "Hey," Joelle's deep voice said as he came and stood in front of her. She drinking all of him. He had no shoes, black board shorts that fit his muscular legs well, and a red short sleeve button down that showed off his broad chest and chiseled abs. Kimberly had to crane her neck to gaze up at his face, appreciating his height well over 6 feet. At that moment, when their eyes met, she knew that she was still in love with Joelle. "Hey yourself," Kimberly finally responded, giving him a broad smile. "I actually want to show you something." Kimberly rose to her feet, took his hand, and led him in serene silence to a beach cove she found when she was 13. She slid her arms around his neck and stood on her tiptoes as he met her mouth for a slow and sweet kiss. His lips turned her into jelly and sent sexual heat coursing through her body. She slowly broke the kiss and pulled off his shirt. She then did away with her bikini top and shorts as she watched him fumble out of his board shorts.
Oopsie. The spice is off the charts for this episode. This romance is getting too steamy for YouTube. Want the full spicy moment? Moans, mess, and all the dirty details? Head over to my Patreon and get the uncensored version of this tale. Simply tap the link in the notes or scan the QR code on the screen to discover how the real climaxes of this story unfold.
Kimberly woke up at 10 that Labor Day morning and dressed quickly, not wanting to miss Joelle before he departed. After they left the bonfire, they didn't talk or see each other again that night. Joelle went to a bar with Aiden and the rest of their friends as a last celebration to end their holiday weekend. Kimberly needed to talk to Joel one final time before he left because she knew things were different this time. She wanted it to be more than just a weekend of hot sex. As she ran downstairs, she crashed into Aiden. "Why are you in such a rush? Your plane doesn't leave until this evening," Aiden asked quizzically. "I just wanted to say goodbye to Joel. You know, he's like another brother to me," Kimberly explained lamely. Aiden nodded his head and then responded obliviously, "You better hurry. He's outside packing up to leave. His ride is here to get him." Kimberly ran the rest of the way down the stairs and out the front door, where she spotted Joel loading his things into a black Mercedes. She began to smile until she noticed he wasn't alone. But he was with a beautiful and voluptuous Hispanic girl that could have starred in any young boy's wet dream. Kimberly felt her heart drop as she watched Joel pick her up off her feet and kiss her long and sensually. Kimberly felt like a voyeur for watching, but was so stunned she couldn't move her feet. The young girl spotted her first and said something to Joel. He looked at her and smiled and waved. Kimberly waved back, turned on her heels, and walked back inside the house. She leaned up against the door as she tried to hold back tears and make sense of what she just witnessed. "You look pale. Is everything okay?" Aiden asked as he came towards her. "Is Joel still out there?" Aiden asked, not waiting for Kimberly to respond to his initial question. Yes, he is. But I don't know for how much longer. He's with a woman," Kimberly said quizzically, moving away from the door. "Ah, Rosa." She's so sexy and has an amazing personality. I'm happy for the both of them, Aiden said, opening the door. Happy for the both of them? Kimberly quietly whispered, not sure if Aiden even heard her. Yeah, she's his fiance. They're getting married, Aiden nonchalantly answered as he walked out the door to greet Rosa and say his goodbyes to Joelle. Fiance? Kimberly's heart dropped to the floor, and she couldn't believe how stupid she'd been. To her, Joelle was everything. To him, Kimberly was just some summer screw. Before he got married to his true love, Rosa, he had a fiance and was never her and would never be hers. So, listeners, it seems like Kimberly got her hot and steamy summer hookup with her childhood crush after all. But was it worth it at the end? How many of us can relate to poor Kimberly fantasizing and idolizing a man for him to turn out to be just any other